on Fox Business Interview. Senator, it's always great to speak to you, sir. And initially we thought you had the votes. Great to see you. Initially you had the votes, and then it looked like you might have something, and then it didn't make it. So what now?
Well, this was, unfortunately, the last best hope, I think, for getting something really substantive and really big done. It was a bipartisan commission that would have led to a significant action in the area of all the different entitlement accounts. Everything would have been on the table. It would have required supermajorities to pass. It would have been subject to an up or down vote without amendment. Senator Conrad, who's the chairman of the Budget Committee, was the primary sponsor. I joined him on it as ranking member. We got 53 votes, so we were 7 votes short. It's a problem. I mean, as your story just said, we are headed toward debt levels that we've never seen. Debt levels which basically mean that we as a nation will be insolvent, in my opinion, within 7 years, but certainly within 10 years. Insolvent. That's a pretty serious term, but it's an accurate term for where we're headed as a nation. And we can't afford to do that to our kids. We can't afford to do it to our country. But we are, unless we get spending under control. The size of the government has grown from 20% of GDP to 25% of GDP just in the last year. Just in the last year. Those are intolerable levels. We've got to get this government under control. We've got to stop adding to the spending, and we have to get disciplined.
All right, Senator. Well, the president is proposing cutting $25 billion per year, and certainly when you're dealing with a $1 trillion deficit, that doesn't sound like much. But do you think that the president's at least making a move in the right direction here?
Yes. But I don't know the specifics, the details. Is it a freeze plus inflation? That's not really a freeze. Does the freeze apply, for example, to the TARP money? It should. No more TARP money should be spent. Does the freeze also apply to the stimulus money spent outside of the 2010 window? It should, in my opinion. It should also apply to spending starting today and not in 2011. So it's the right direction, it's the right language, it's the right page, but the details are still to be worked out in a way that I think will actually accomplish something significant. You
and I have not had a chance to talk since the bank fee proposal came from the president, and I know that you have always been very critical of the money that we've doled out to Fannie and Freddie, $291 billion at this point. Are we again missing the mark by going after banks and not really dealing with the problems of Fannie and Freddie?
Well, Fannie and Freddie were at the center of the problem which we had in the real estate industry, and they were there because the Congress pushed them there. I mean, members of Congress keep pointing fingers at everybody but ourselves, but you need to look in the mirror around here to see what the real problem is, and it is the United States Congress in the area of real estate and subprime loans, because we basically pushed Fannie and Freddie to underwrite loans where we either knew the value of the property didn't meet the value of the loan, or we knew the person couldn't pay the loan back once the interest rates readjusted to something that was more market-oriented. So we've got to do something about Fannie and Freddie. My view is we should privatize them, we should take them off the federal books, and we should make them stand on their own 2 feet.
Senator, it seems that the president has made the budget deficit a central focus of his State of the Union address tomorrow night. How much do you think this is a result of the election up in Massachusetts last week? And do you think that it's lip service, or has a real lesson been learned? Are they listening to what the people said up in Massachusetts?
Well, if they're listening to what the people said in Massachusetts, then they'd stop trying to push this health care plan, which involves a $2.5 trillion expansion in the government, major new entitlement programs being put on the book, expansion of entitlement programs which we can't afford today. So I'll consider it to be serious language when we start doing something, when the language is backed up by substance. And in this instance, as long as they're pushing that health care plan, they're not backing it up with substance. They're moving in the exact opposite direction of expanding this government at a rate that we can't possibly afford.
Well, let me ask you then, Senator Gregg. I mean, obviously, with the filibuster-proof Senate now gone, with one more Republican seat there in the Senate, are you feeling a little more hopeful? Do you have some pet projects and pet bills maybe in your back pocket right now that you do want to try and push through now, that you think you might have a little more support on both sides of the aisle?
Well, we just lost one, which was the actual commission, which would have allowed us to get something done around here. I will be very interested in what their budget says. They're sending it up on February 1st. Is it a budget that really tries to bring down the rate of growth of the government, especially on the entitlement side? That's where the money is. You know, this discretionary initiative is good language, and it would be good to do a freeze, but as you pointed out, it's $25 billion on a $1.3 trillion or $4 trillion deficit, not a big number relative to the entire deficit. Obviously, $25 billion is a big number, but not relative to the whole deficit. The real problem is entitlement spending, and we need to get our hands around that. And the way to do it was this commission, but if that's not going to work, then we need another approach, and I hope we'll get it in the president's budget.
You know, you came out, of course, in support of Fed Chairman Bernanke and the reconfirmation. A lot of folks surprised, market participants were surprised at the amount of discontent with the job that he has done. You support Mr. Bernanke. What do you want to see him do in his next term if the Senate reconfirms him?
Well, one of the reasons I think he needs to be reconfirmed is that he understands, and he is already starting to work on the plan for how we start to get some of this money supply out of the economy. You know, the Fed put a huge amount of money supply into the economy to stabilize the financial industry, somewhere around $2.5 trillion by our estimates. And you got to get that money out of the system, or else you end up with an inflationary event. The value of the dollar starts to decrease even further. So they're already gaming that out. They've already taken a little run at it here. They did a practice exercise. They've got a new tool, which is that they can pay banks interest on their deposits, so that should help them. But you want a Fed chairman who understands the importance of reducing that amount of money that's floating around in an orderly way, and he does, and that's one of the reasons I support him, because I think this is the big issue that's going to loom relative to the Fed as we move forward.
Senator Judd Gregg from New Hampshire. Senator, it's always great to have you and great to speak with you today, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thank you, Senator. And you know, he brings up, Clint, from a market's perspective, you know, he brings up, of course, the stimulus that's out there in the system, and now more and more the chorus is